people that know to go up there and scout around. And I have a guy that I'm paying. He does a deal where he will spend 2 days, and he will be for me the 5 days before my hunt in that area scouting for me. And he will send me pictures and maps and what he found. Because since I get a new granddaughter in early November, I will be in Spokane when that happens. What my plan was to spend the week that I'm in Spokane scouting for elk. I'll be helping my son and daughter and son-in-law with their new little one and my little yay high wingman.
There are 4 mountain lions in Munn's Wilderness Preserve.
Oh, there's probably more than that.
Maybe coming over your way.
There's probably more than that.
Molly was hiking and sent me a picture. So there's fresh scat on my hiking trail. And I was studying back at the house. And she says, what kind of scat is it? And I did the Google Lens. I took the pictures, put it on Google Lens, and that's mountain lion scat. I said, Holly, get out of there now.
Yeah.
She was by herself. I said, never hike by yourself.
People say that about black bears too. The closest I've been to a black bear is probably from me to Mel.
I hope he was sleeping.
No, he didn't take another step. He was sleeping permanently.
Oh, yeah.
He was there and then he was asleep. And
well, the thing about mountain lions, she didn't know anything because she'd never hiked before. She fell in love with hiking here. If they have a kill nearby, they're going to get you.
maybe.
If they have a baby,
Maybe.
if they have a baby.
But it's not baby time now. So you have to know what and when. I'll send this around. This is the sign-up sheet for the Spiritual Gift Seminar.
That's when again?
November 2nd. It's a Saturday from 9 till noon. My wife will be doing the snacks. Oh, yeah, I did. You can make sure I have these turned on. I do. Okay, I gave you some homework last week. Do you remember what the homework was? I know Carol does because we talked about it after the Bible study.
Who do we need to forget? We did.
Yeah. And I don't necessarily want...
Second one is similar to it.
Okay. I don't... This is not a... I'm going to ask you to flay yourself publicly. What has the Holy Spirit revealed to you in the last week? I've been thinking a lot about forgiveness. And you had a question that we're going to talk about tonight. Okay.
The joy of meeting people and interacting with them. And, I find myself naturally saying, bless you. And the other day I was out in the morning and I passed somebody who had a huge pile of stones that I had need of. And I said, hey, can you sell me some of those? And he said, no, I'll give them to you.
No.
And then he not only gave them to me, he loaded my bucket and put it in the car.
Oh.
And I told him, I said, God has really blessed me this morning. May he bless you also. And I thought,
Nice.
wow, what a great morning.
Nice.
Isn't that the gift of exhortation?
No, exhortation is more prophetic in nature.
Oh.
Encouragement, for sure.
Yeah.
No, exhortation is more, thus says the Lord.
Oh. So would it be hospitality in a way? To be people-oriented?
Which in particular? Which action that Mel was just talking about in particular? I can think of a couple of different spiritual gifts. Yeah. Certainly encouragement, helps, evident.
Yeah.
So thinking about forgiveness. And I'm going to preface what I'm about to teach tonight by saying this. Entirely too often, people, particularly Christians, dismiss the seriousness of this teaching of Jesus. They dismiss it altogether. I'm only giving you one sheet. This is in addition to the previous PowerPoint. Because the language of the Lord's Prayer, I won't say it is imperative, but it is almost conditional. The strictest language of the petition, forgive us our debts as we forgive our debtors, is forgive us as we are forgiving others their debts against us. And I get a lot of folks that, well, you don't have any idea what they did to me. And I will usually, depending on the circumstance, reframe that with, well, what did they do to Jesus, who is the one calling us to forgive first? Father, forgive them, for they know not what they're doing, as Jesus hung on the cross. The thief on his right hand, forgive us, Jesus said, today you'll be with me in paradise. But even beyond that, to live with unforgiveness in our heart is an affront to the grace of God, present or not, depending on how you look at it in our life. Each one of us, when we come to saving faith in Jesus Christ, are forgiven an unpayable debt, one we can't pay on our own. There's nothing we can do on this earth. Nobody is good enough to warrant Jesus' forgiveness. But God, in love and mercy and grace, extends to all that forgiveness, regardless of the sins committed. Okay? So I did some research today, and I read a couple different articles that I want to share with you insights from before I get back to living out this petition as we forgive our debtors. So what does unforgiveness do? And I found a lot of literature in my search today, both from a Christian perspective and from a healthcare perspective, that indicates unforgiveness and its concomitant emotions, bitterness, anger, we'll just stop with those three, lie at the root of a great many mental, emotional issues. And physical as well. Yeah. So I asked Google the question and found a couple of articles today. What does unforgiveness do? And the first one comes from masters.edu. It's a university. I've got the whole address if you want to look the article up yourself. But he talks, and this was supposed to have been come one after the other, but it's all there, so I'm going to give it to you all at once. What does unforgiveness do? The first is unforgiveness imprisons you in your past. Imprisons you in your past. You said good thought? Yes. Okay, I wasn't quite missed it. Someone that is unable to forgive literally lives in bondage to that hurt. Many people that I know that I counsel with forgiveness issues Nurture that hurt like a campfire. Okay? You know what happens if you ignore a campfire? It goes out. But on the other hand, if you keep feeding it sticks, it keeps alive. And refusing to forgive keeps that hurt alive in us. I think of this MASH episode. It's my favorite show. And I can almost quote those episodes as they're on. I've seen them, but it's still funny. There's this one episode where Hawkeye decides he needs barbecue. Not just any barbecue from Adam's Ribs in Chicago. And as he's talking about the sauce, he said, I kept a little cut alive on my lip for an entire year just so I could experience the Adams sauce. He said the pain was exquisite.
Oh, no.
But the sauce was delicious. And there's such emotion that Alan Alda brings to that. And so many people live there with their hurts. They keep that pain alive, remembering. And it goes deeper than just remembering. It nurtures a seed of bitterness and anger. The unforgiveness that we have never lets the wound heal. And this isn't in the notes, it's a freebie. Unforgiveness never, ever hurts the person we have a grudge against. It doesn't. Many people don't know we have a grudge against them. It doesn't hurt them. It only hurts us. So it imprisons us in the past. Two, it produces bitterness. The cumulative effect of remembering without forgiveness some offense done against you is that you become a bitter person. The longer you remember the offense, the more data you accumulate on the offense. Oh, did you see the way they looked? Not just what they did. Oh, they looked. Oh, they had to have thought about it. You can create this entire scenario behind the event. You keep adding data that deepens the hurt. The more you recite the memory, the more it occupies your thinking, the more it shapes your person, and it turns your heart bitter. Bitterness is not just a sin. It is an infection, and it infects your whole life. Because a person who is consumed by bitterness is not only bitter in one area of their life. It's interesting if you talk to people how much that bitterness gets projected outward. Okay. Well, all men. It's a bitter heart. And the sad part about it is the person who is nursing that grudge oftentimes doesn't see it, but I guarantee you the people around do. Because it's just like having stink on your hands. Everybody can smell it except you. It just pervades your life. Bitterness can be directly traced to the failure to forgive. You show me someone who's bitter, and I'll show you someone who's nursing a grudge and has never released that. So bitterness in your life makes a person caustic, sarcastic, condemning, nasty, angry, and fits of rage. All of these emotions are driven by bitterness. So when someone flies off the handle without warrant, why is that? Well, this thing wasn't worth that. No, it's because of something back here.
Triggers.
Huh?
Triggers.
Yeah. Harassed by the memories of what you can't forgive, your thoughts become malignant towards others, and your whole view of life becomes distorted. Anger begins to rage in you. It can easily get out of control. Emotions begin to run wild. You may even entertain continuing thoughts and fantasies of revenge. What would revenge look like? Many do without thinking about it. Oh, I wish a dump truck of manure would pour it on their car. Oh, yeah. Oh, yeah. And here's where the bitterness is insidious. A lot of times, you may not realize you're harboring the fantasy of revenge, especially if you find yourself, well, they got what they deserved, or karma. I saw a meme this week that said, karma never misses an address. We don't believe in karma, but okay, there's people who that's their form of, oh, look what karma brought them. And they take glee in the person who hurt them being hurt in return. Okay?
And they have no idea what it's doing to themselves.
Many don't. Many don't. Or they're unwilling to go to the depths necessary to forgive. Even your casual conversation becomes a form for slander against the offender. Forgiveness, on the other hand, dispels bitterness. Without forgiveness, the bitterness, okay, it's like this. Darkness is not a thing. You know that, right? Darkness is not a thing. It is the absence of light, right? Evil is not a thing. It is the absence of good. Okay. Bitterness is not a thing. It is the absence of forgiveness in my heart. Forgiveness dispels bitterness and replaces it with love, joy, peace, gentleness, goodness, faith, meekness, and self-control. Why would someone want to live with the accumulated bitterness that makes them violate every relationship? They're both long gone now, but and I don't know all the details. My uncle and my grandfather, they were so very alike, but each one of them would be furious for you to point that out. And they had this running thing between them. After my grandfather died, I gave a eulogy at his funeral, and they were my thoughts because, and my uncle had some rather salty things to say about my eulogy and things that decorum will not permit me to say in public. And what flashed across my mind was how sad this is. Your father died. He's in the ground. He's dead. You can quit kicking him now. Okay, that bitterness from some either real or imagined, it just, okay. It is not an exaggeration to say that most of the ground Satan gains in our lives is through grudges and unforgiveness. That's 3, by the way. Unforgiveness will give Satan an open door into your life and into your heart. One of the powerful biblical images of what unforgiveness does is the poisoning of King Saul's relationship with David. Most of what Saul perceived David to be was not reality. It wasn't. It was his own mind replaying and nurturing this grudge that he had against David. That becomes an open window for Satan to enter our lives and to spoil our relationship with God.
What was that grudge?
Huh?
What was the grudge?
He became more popular than Saul.
And did Saul know he would be the next king?
No, not at that point.
He didn't know that
He didn't know that yet, no.
He was popular because he killed Goliath.
And Philistines, and he was a great warrior.
Oh,
You know, had Saul not disobeyed God, had Saul not nurtured this grudge, the line of David might look very different, because Saul was anointed king. And there's a whole lot of Jewish history that goes behind why Saul was probably not the king that Israel needed, but that they wanted anyhow.
well, he did at the beginning.
He was a man after God's heart at the beginning.
He went and hid, though, when he heard he was going to be king. He went and hid.
Yeah.
He didn't want to do it.
Well, real quick, what tribe was David from?
Judah?
Benjamin.
Benjamin.
Benjamin from Bethlehem. Saul, on the other hand, was, it just left me.
I don't know.
It was one of the northern tribes.
Oh.
They were the donkey herders. They were the outcasts. But because he was good looking and big and strong, that's who Israel wanted to be their king. At any rate, unforgiveness will hinder your relationship and fellowship with God. Bitterness, unforgiveness will hinder your fellowship and your relationship with God. Why would anyone in their right mind, a disciple, not want to be right with God? The God who says, as you forgive others, I am forgiving you. Whatever you forgive on earth will be forgiven in heaven. Okay. And I wrote one more that the author did not, so you'll want to add 5 here. Unforgiveness affects your other relationships as well. Unforgiveness affects your other relationships as well. I made some notes here and I don't know where they are. Two pages over. Okay. This article, oh no, that I realized why I can't find those. I'm not ready for those yet. That comes along. Okay. So unforgiveness, and what are some of the symptoms of unforgiveness in a person's life? Unforgiveness leads to depression, anxiety, stress, hostility, and anger, among other things. You show me someone that's angry, 9 times out of 10, I'll show you someone that's got a grudge. Good, Mel.
80% of physical illness, they don't know where it comes from. It comes from this. I mean, God has made our bodies so that if we go against what He's given us, our bodies will react to that.
Absolutely.
In a very negative way.
Mm-hmm. So let's kind of kick this question around a little bit. What is forgiveness anyhow? What is forgiveness anyhow? It is absolutely necessary. Thank you, Carol. What is forgiveness anyhow?
In a way, it's sort of recognizing that it was Satan that's behind all this, and he's taken advantage of someone else, and the other person was helpless to keep that from happening.
Okay.
So in a sense, it's sort of saying, I realize where this is really coming from.
Okay.
I'm feeling bad that this person is exhibiting the enemy's power.
Okay.
That's sort of weird.
Mm-hmm. What is forgiveness anyhow? And it can be your definition. I have some ideas here, but I want to hear what you're thinking first. What is forgiveness?
We have to try to analyze their motive
Okay.
and what they did to you and why,
Mm-hmm.
and then try to figure out what to do about it.
Yep. That is the article that I've come up with for Johns Hopkins. That's a big part of it, and we'll come there. What is forgiveness? What is forgiveness, anyhow?
Well, if you have to do it alone, it's a reconciliation that you do by yourself, which is hard to do. It's always easier to reconcile if there are two people. The other.
I'm not equating forgiveness and reconciliation. That two different issues.
Well, is it a step part of reconciliation?
Oh, absolutely. To be reconciled, there has to be forgiveness given. Absolutely. But the first step to reconciliation has to be forgiveness. And I made this statement last week. You can forgive a dead person. Okay? Forgiveness does not depend on the other person.
Because God is.
I'm sorry?
Because God knows that's in your heart.
Yeah.
I would say forgetting.
Have you ever heard the statement, forgive and forget? It's a lie.
Mm-hmm.
It's a lie. There's only one who forgives and forgets, and that's God.
Okay.
In our
So
human
it's not-
knowledge,
It's not forgetting, it's putting it in the past, or,
okay,
I don't know.
that's okay. This is where we kind of get in the deep weeds
Yeah,
because we don't really understand what forgiveness is.
I know, because I think about things that have happened to me with my brother, and, we just talked it out and let it be. I mean, didn't bring it up again. It's over.
It's an action on my part.
It absolutely is.
I mean, I'm responding in a way
Mm-hmm.
that needs to be forgiven from me because I'm the one that owns the response.
Let me clarify just a little bit. We throw this forgiveness thing around, and I think, Victoria, you mentioned that there are people who are professional at being offended. Okay.
Yes.
I ran across this quote. D. Freeborn, one of my professors, said, dealing with life's irritations does not call for forgiveness. Somebody cut you off in the traffic circle does not necessitate forgiveness. It may call for graciousness of spirit, patience, or perseverance, but not forgiveness. To forgive someone who cuts us off on the freeway, beats us to the last parking spot, or makes a mistake is to diminish the true meaning of forgiveness. Lewis Smedes says, forgiveness is for deep wounds, hurts, and wrongs. Forgiveness breaks the power of bitterness and revenge. To truly forgive is to dance to the beat of God's forgiving heart. Okay, so coming back, what is forgiveness anyhow? Forgiveness is not a feeling.
Well, I've been studying conflict negotiation and forgiveness and reconciliation for over 6 weeks.
Okay?
And one thing that I did learn, as part of giving forgiveness, is you stop ruminating on it.
That's huge.
Rumination.
Yep.
You have to just stop
Yep.
because that feeds it.
Yep. You're getting into the how, though, not the what. How, not what. And that's where, how can I do that? How can I do that?
Well, one thing, I think when you realize that there's a problem, which sometimes I don't catch on, but when I do realize that somebody has a problem, then I try to analyze what caused it.
Uh-huh.
And then I try to decide if that's really real, if there was a reason or a part of a reason, or if they had any cause to do it.
Yeah.
Before I have to forgive them, because sometimes I think they're right, and sometimes I think they're not.
Yep. And that's more how.
Yeah.
That's more how, not what.
I find myself thinking about the word for.
Okay?
What does for mean in the word forgive? Does that mean previous?
Well, no,
Given?
no. If forgiveness is not a feeling, and it's not, because feelings are notoriously undependable. Okay? You can feel forgiving one day and get up the next morning and be out of coffee and hit your big toe up under the bed rail and not feel very forgiving the next day. It has nothing to do with feelings. It has everything to do with a conscious decision, an intellectual choice to extend something to someone else. Forgiveness is releasing our offender from our liability to judgment, to retribution, or to revenge. It is a conscious decision to release our offender from our personal liability to judgment, to retribution, or to revenge. In other words, it is a conscious decision to see the people or persons who wronged us as God sees them. Okay? It is a conscious decision to release negative feelings and emotions, whether that person deserves our forgiveness or not. It's a conscious decision to release.
You have to mean it. You don't just.
Oh, absolutely.
You don't just sit down with someone and say, you got to talk it over, talk it out.
Maybe, maybe not.
Maybe not.
Maybe not. You can't talk it over with someone who's dead.
Well, yeah, for that instance, but
Yeah.
I'm thinking of my brother again.
Yeah. And I'm going to come back to something Victoria said last week. Notice, forgiveness is not allowing someone to return to a place where they could injure us again. Okay?
There are some people that look for Christians and abuse them because they know they'll forgive them no matter what they do. And they take advantage of it. You're not a Christian, and then they repeat it, and then they repeat it. I've seen that.
Okay.
Well, my brother repeated it.
In
Okay.
a lot. They look, they target.
Do we, I don't have my Bible laying there right now. Do we believe the book? Do we believe the Bible?
Mm-hmm.
Doesn't Jesus say something along the lines of if someone strikes to you on the right cheek, turn the other cheek?
The best thing is not to go near them again.
Huh?
The best thing is not to go near them again.
No. That just keeps it inside you.
No.
That's exactly right. Thank you. That's exactly right.
Yeah, you have to settle up.
Yeah.
But
And I'll give you this illustration from my life. When my youngest daughter was in her early teens, at the church we were at, she got very close to a family in the church. He was the music director. She was on the church board. They had a baby who was born very premature. We walked through them with that. My youngest babysat their older son. Ultimately, the baby died. In the offing, and Abby would be over at their house, and church person, families there. Well, come to find out through a set of circumstances, he was abusing my daughter. And I found out about it third hand from a counselor who was a mandatory report. And I talked with my church board about it, and they rallied around us and went to the individual and said, look, you can't come to church here anymore because you can't make that young girl relive this every time you walk in the doors. And through the legal process, through the counseling process, I met him one more time, and he was in my office, and I said, look, I forgive you. He said, I don't understand how you didn't tear my head off. I said, well, you're mistaken if you don't think I didn't want to. But I can't allow myself to be poisoned by that. Now, that did not mean that I forgive you. Let's restore your leadership position. Let's, go on as if nothing happened. Wounds and damage have consequences. My board backed me up and said, no, you just can't come to church here anymore. And there were people that left the church over that decision, but the board made the right one. I didn't make it. So I would not nor could not put my daughter in place where she would be violated all over again. I bear no ill will towards the man who took advantage of her. None. And that's not me, that's God. Because my 2 ex-sisters-in-law, we'll just say, I would walk across the street to spit on their shoes. But
Did the abuser ever say, I'm sorry?
yes,
Oh,
yes.
because I have a circumstance goes back when I was young, that someone did something to me, and I told him after a long time, I brought it up, and he didn't remember.
Mm-hmm.
And
Many
I said-
don't.
And I said, you can't forget something like that, because I wanted to forgive it.
Because he's done so many.
But see, here's the thing. Forgiveness isn't about the other person.
Okay.
It's about your own heart.
Yeah.
Reconciliation's another story. That's the next level.
Okay.
But no, it's about what happens in your heart. And interestingly enough, that was in a Nazarene church. That family goes to a Wesleyan church. And when my daughter and her husband were looking for a church, I inadvertently said, well, what about, he said, I can't go there to the Wesleyan church. Like, well, because they go there. It's like, sorry, I forgot that. Forgiveness does not mean you allow someone to be in a place where they can wound you again.
Yeah.
Okay. But it does mean you release the feelings of anger and bitterness that go along with unforgiveness. Is that easy? It is not. It is not. D. Freeborn, in an article written for Holiness Today, says this: rather than a condition, the petition second part, forgive us our debts as we are forgiving our debtors, the second part, signals quality and sincerity of our Christian lives. To be forgiven by the Father moves us outward to others. To ask for forgiveness, but to refuse it to someone else, belies the integrity of our relationship with the God who unconditionally forgives. I need to say that again. To ask for forgiveness, but to refuse it to someone else, belies the integrity of our relationship with God who unconditionally forgives. Here is the possibility of a treacherous minefield of deception. Without forgiving others, we pray while living a lie. So if we harbor unforgiveness and bitterness and anger in our hearts, we cannot with integrity pray, Father, forgive us our debts.
Am I a liar if I say to somebody, I forgive you? I don't know how I'm forgiving you, but I know that through Christ this can happen. And I give up my right to hang on to the forgiveness.
Say that last sentence again, Mel.
Give up my right to be angry. If you
Yeah, that is the heart of forgiveness, a conscious decision to surrender my right of revenge. Are we going to be best buddies? Probably not. Probably not. But maybe. But maybe.
That's why I had to bring it out into the open,
Mm-hmm.
because it was always in my thoughts when I would see him.
Yeah.
So after that,
Yeah.
I feel much
Every
better.
situation is different.
Yeah.
And I'm going to pick on you, Victoria, because you're silently there shaking your head at me.
I'm just thinking, God says, be angry, but sin not. So
Okay, what does
anger is an emotion.
It is.
Emotions are neither bad nor good. They're just emotions, really.
It depends. What you do with the
Exactly.
emotion
He says sin
is what
not.
makes it sinful or not.
That's right. He says sin not.
Yep.
But it's unhealthy to feel angry and not admit it or acknowledge that you feel anger, because that's really bad.
No, I'm not
to
saying you
have-
don't acknowledge your feelings.
Right.
I'm saying you release it,
Mhm.
because unconfessed, unrequited, undealt with anger, it is so poisonous
Yeah.
to our soul.
Well, Jesus got angry and he beat those money changers,
But he didn't hold a grudge against him either.
but he did show his anger.
He did.
Evidently,
but-
that wasn't sinning.
Okay. What I'm about to say, I'm saying in love, okay?
I know.
Be very careful, because that's a very slippery
Oh, I know,
slope.
but that was a situation.
I understand.
A whole
I
different
understand.
thing.
What was Jesus angry about?
Them being money changers at the temple, not in
Mm-mm.
turning the temple into a bank or
Mm-mm.
a store.
wasn't there
Mm-mm.
something about children?
He was angry because they were keeping people from coming to the temple.
Oh, because they didn't have money enough?
Absolutely.
Oh.
There were people who could not come to worship. Okay. So it was the holy, the righteous indignation.
Right.
Okay.
Gotcha.
And
Just saying.
there is it's light years from personal anger. Okay.
Gotcha.
Gosh, I've seen so many people who have been unwilling to let go of anger over past hurts. Swear to me, oh, I've forgiven them. But do you remember the days when we used to have cesspools?
Yeah.
Okay? You know what I mean, right? You were never in any doubt there was a cesspool nearby. Why?
Stunk.
You could smell it. Okay, if the wind was right, you could smell it. We used to have a leach field in the front yard of the church, and I had to mow the grass. And I knew right where it was, because I'd be mowing the grass and I'd slip and there'd be skid marks and this.
Oh, dear. You think you wear it off the
See, that unsurrendered anger, and please understand, I am not saying we put an abuser back in a position to abuse,
Right. That's what they expect.
but we release them from our anger. We release them from our right. The issue that I talked about earlier, we pursued legal course. And finally, our prosecutor's like, look, you got an option. The only way we're going to be able to get a conviction here is to put your daughter on the stand. And as parents, we decided we didn't need to have our 12-year-old go through that.
Exactly.
So he got off with a slap on the wrist.
That's not good.
It's the legal system.
I know.
That's beyond my control. So rather than harbor that to protect our daughter, we're like, we're going to let this go.
Your daughter, she doesn't, what do you think today? How she feels about that past?
She's been through a lot of counseling.
Really?
Good.
Yeah. We took her to counseling and she resented that at first. It
But
wasn't
she
until she got to
appreciated it.
college and decided.
Yeah.
So I think ultimately she's healed. Is there PTSD from? Yeah, probably. Probably. Um, she called me when I was driving into the office today. She's like, Daddy, I just witnessed a mugging. I need you on the phone with me.
Bless her.
You know, so it could be some of that or, um,
I was an intake rep for 2 psychiatrists and 13 behavioral therapists. I heard everything. I was the person they had to come to,
uh-huh.
talk to, and then I had to assign them, depending on what was going on in their life, to certain therapists for that. And I've read statistics, and I've seen a lot of 4 out of 5 women have been sexually molested or assaulted or abused.
I believe
4
that.
out of 5.
Mhm.
That's the truth.
Yeah.
I was in a large group of women one time, and everybody was asked, if you've been molested or assaulted or sexually abused or whatever, raise your hand. Almost everyone in that room did. Almost every woman in that room did, and that's the truth. And I've heard so many people, women, open up. People tell me things I don't know. They just do.
Yeah.
And when I was a hairstylist, you're touching people, ministering in that way, touching them, they open up and they will tell you everything. When you're shampooing their hair and being kind, and helping them look better, they'll open up. Even men open up and tell you things, And I was glad I hadn't had that job before. I was that intake rep before I did, salon work. But I've heard it, pretty much everything. Nothing shocks me. It's tough to know all that. Really tough. But yeah, there's a lot going on.
Here's how I know that there is dump truck loads of unforgiveness in people's hearts.
A lot of hurt.
Well, the older I get, the more radically optimistic I am about the healing power of God's grace. Okay. I listen to how people talk about other people. And since we're a mixed group here tonight, particularly how women talk about men and how men talk about women.
And that hurts marriages. That
Oh, absolutely it
social,
does. Absolutely it does. There's a pervasive attitude amongst women that across social media, there aren't any good men anywhere.
Well, if 4 out of 5 have been injured, harmed, you can understand that. I wish we had more men we could really feel good about and really see in their lives, that they're good. I mean, really good. And safe. I would say safe. Because they're predatory from a young age.
Did you just hear how you talked about men generally?
But that's because
Did you just hear?
Yes, 4 out of 5, though. Think about that. So, I mean, it's statistically.
I need to see more statistics. Okay. Because, and I'll pick up, for instance, the Me Too movement. There was a push in therapeutic circles to identify everything as sexual abuse. Everything. Okay. 2 15-year-old kids pawing each other in the backseat of a car. But that's what gets reported. Okay. So, and I've driven school bus. Okay.
So you,
I've been places where women are every bit as predatory as men are.
yeah, sometimes they bring it on.
No should always mean no. Okay. But when you paint everybody with the same brush, that reflects something inward.
Well, look at how a lot of society kind of starts at boys, actually. It's like, you got to be a man, and you got, a lot of men do this. Chase the girls, and the more you get, the more man you are. Seriously.
You're on a slippery slope.
I had a girlfriend. She went on a trip with a group, and the men started taking a 13-year-old boy in the strip joint and forcing him. He didn't want to go. He was crying. He's like, I don't want you. And the men made him. And she was so angry because they did that. And I mean, that's because they're grooming that child to be like them. Or he's not a man. She said they were telling him, you got to be a man. You got to be a man. So that needs to change. That needs to go away. I don't know if it will or
Very
not.
deeply.
Huh?
But,
You're thinking very deeply.
but I mean, it's not everybody that does that, but that was
But
a certain culture.
listen to men do this.
Those men did that.
Some men do this.
Right. I didn't
Okay.
say everyone. We want to see more that don't.
See, words are important.
Yeah.
And
This was an instance.
a friend of mine posted this, it's like, what men are you looking for? You're not looking for the good ones. You listen to every Taylor Swift song.
Oh.
It's like,
How can you,
and she's a hero. It's like,
how can you even hear anything? All you do is look.
I don't. I read words.
You read
But
words.
see, the depth of the anger and the unforgiveness is evident by our conversation. And we're disciples. Okay? I'm not a sexual predator.
Well, I know.
Last I checked, I'm a man.
I'm so thankful because you have a great marriage and you're honorable and wholesome and healthy, and you're not a predator.
I have two brothers. I'll be 59 next month. My next younger brother will be 58, 8 days after me. My youngest brother will be 47. Both of my brothers are divorcees. And I'm going to preface what I just said by saying it takes two to tango. Okay. I do not believe when divorce is present, there is an innocent party. Okay. Less guilty, maybe. But in both instances, my ex-sister-in-laws chose to run around, have affairs behind my brother's back. One of them is horrifically emotionally scarred. Horrifically. The other one, my brother Pat, who'll be here with me next month, went to counseling. He was much more gracious with his ex-wife than I ever would have been. Much more. I'd have thrown her stuff in the front yard and said, you come get it. He went over and above. But I look at those two women, and I don't have time for them. But I don't paint all women with the brush of my ex-sister-in-laws.
And I don't paint all men that way
Okay.
either, but there's a lot of generally Playboy magazines and, all that stuff out there.
There's Playgirls and
I don't know. I never
Ask
hung
how
around
about,
girls like that.
how about when you see the
Harlequin romance novels,
I never.
I can't.
Woman
figure out
porn.
Where we're going with this conversation.
huh?
Forgiveness.
Where are we going with this conversation?
We have to forgive.
Okay. But
Okay.
It doesn't sound like we're.
We should be.
emphasizing the-
Yeah. Well,
There's a lot of
that's my point. That's my point. Lan, I've interrupted you twice. I'm sorry.
That's all right. Some of the people coming over the border, and you hear about what they've done to some women, and they put the pictures of the women on the TV. I gotta say, if I had a daughter that looked like that, and that picture was put on TV, I wouldn't put it on. I'm sorry. I mean, I know she's dead, but we got to watch the way we bring up our children.
We absolutely do.
That's my point right there.
Yeah, you don't egg somebody on by how you dress and look.
Yep.
And I hate it on TV when you have all this women showing so much. Why? We don't have to do that.
Yeah.
Why? What happened to the respect?
It's not there.
It's not.
And I can remove this forgiveness discussion from men and women. Anytime you have us versus them, there's a heart issue at work. Okay? I'm very upset with this whole thing going on in our nation. Well, all of the Haitians are eating cats and dogs. Okay. One, it's not happening. I've got friends who are boots on the ground in Springfield, Ohio. Two, some of the most beautiful people I've ever met in my life are Haitians. I mentored a Haitian pastor in my life. That's absolute. The us versus them reflects a heart.
It's not.
Yeah.
You don't use
Immigration, how we throw that term around.
I mean, I would have found different pictures of my daughters to put on TV. I'm sorry.
Yeah. Well, next week we're going to still talk about forgiveness, and we're going to talk more about the how.
Well, I have one thing though. When Jesus was angry at the fig tree, he cursed it. He was angry, and he did something about it. He cursed that tree. And then when they came back, it had no fruit. It was like dead to the roots. It was dead.
Yeah,
So
that's a different story.
I know, but that's anger though.
Again, be very careful with how you're talking about anger.
I know. Sometimes anger is a good thing.
That's true.
I would say that's very true.
I've used it. I remember I read a book on anger, and then I had to take a trip, and my daughter, Priscilla, was about 12 years old, and I booked tickets for us together, seated together, and we got to the airport to get the tickets at the counter, and we were seated far away from each other in the plane.
Ooh.
And she started crying, and I was standing there at the counter. She was standing there. We had 25 people in line behind us. And I just said, I'm angry. And I wouldn't move. I just kept saying, I'm angry, over and over. And he finally just put us in first class together.
Yeah.
Wow. That's
Yeah.
good.
Because I wouldn't budge.
Yeah.
And I wasn't saying anything bad. I was just saying, I am angry. And I wouldn't move.
Well, sometimes you have to do that in today's world because they don't listen unless you really express yourself.
And I won't for a minute not say that I don't get angry. We have to be very careful.
Exactly. Don't sin.
Hold on. Let me finish. Because our propensity in our fallen state is to be much harder on others than we are ourselves. And it should be the exact opposite. We should be much more graceful to others and much harder on ourselves. And y'all, Jesus is getting where the rubber hits the road on this. Okay? And we're talking around, and it illustrates my point.
Well, in conflict, we have goals.
I'm not talking about conflict.
But when you know your goals, you're not going to attack people because that's not going to be a goal.
Yep.
To make a good positive resolution with somebody else, you don't attack them.
Yep.
There's a whole
I'm
process.
talking about releasing somebody from an internal poison
Yeah.
in my own heart. And I've been a pastor I'm in my 35th year as a full-time pastor. I have seen more Christians poisoned by unforgiveness and bitterness, and they would never own up to it. It will poison our relationship with God.
Can't ruminate on it.
That's right. We'll talk more about how next week.
You know, our thoughts cause our
Yeah.
emotions.
It's interesting.
Yeah.
It is.
Yeah. It's about being surrendered to the Holy Spirit of God, surrendering to God's will in our life. And as long as we're willing to harbor and nurture resentment, we cannot with integrity pray, Lord, forgive me.
Well, I turn it over to God. I say, I can't deal with this. Please, you take it.
Yeah.
You can do it. You
Okay.
do better than I
And here's what I'm going to say to that. That's not a once and done deal with forgiveness.
That's right.
That's
That's still,
an ongoing.
that still keeps going.
Yeah. When you find it, you have to surrender it back to God. I urge you, brother, by the mercies of God, to present yourselves as living sacrifices. That's an oxymoron. Sacrifice is dead.
I like creating me a clean heart, oh Lord. A clean
Well, how does he do that?
You give
We
me-
surrender ourselves.
you let
We
me
present,
down to
we
it.
die to ourselves daily.
Yeah.
So, all right. We're over time. Good to have you all here tonight. There's more coffee back there so you don't fall asleep on your way home.
Coffee?
Huh?
What kind of coffee is it?
It's Folgers.
Oh,
Folgers Silk or something like that. It's Carrie's favorite. And it is fresh. I made it just beforehand. Thank you, Mel.
what's their little just that here? Now I see how old mine is. I don't know the last drop. Is that right?